Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Speaking of Resilience podcast. I'm your host, Kate Madigan, Director of the Michigan Climate Action Network and Clean Energy Program Director for the Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities. Today, my guest is Justin Onwenu.
Going back decades, our water infrastructure hasn't been invested in, and so the cost of providing water services to communities has gone up. So you've seen federal government disinvesting in water infrastructure. You've seen state and local governments doing the same. And as a result, it costs more to get water because of a lot of different reasons, a lot of policies rooted in austerity. You have local governments throughout the country, in Michigan as well, and Detroit as well, who have been shutting people off for lack of payment. It's important, again, to remind folks that the cost of water has risen. It's not about people's unwillingness to pay. And when the pandemic was starting and was in the news and in front of people's minds, there just was a lot of conversation around hygiene. You need to wash your hands. And this was at the same time that thousands of people were without water.
Justin is a fourth-generation Detroiter and environmental justice organizer for the Sierra Club. As a Detroit-based organizer, he fights for clean air, clean and affordable water, and a just economy for all communities. He currently serves as the inaugural Michigan Advisory Council on Environmental Justice. He was also recently appointed to the Democratic National Committee's Environment and Climate Crisis Council Platform Committee, where he is one of 12 nationwide members responsible for helping develop recommendations for the climate, environment, and energy planks of the 2020 Democratic Party platform. In our interview, Justin and I discuss climate change and extreme weather events and its disproportionate impacts on low-income communities and communities of color, including his experience with Hurricane Harvey and the devastation that storm caused, which he observed while he was in college and inspired a lot of his current work. We also talk about water shutoffs in Detroit and their significance during the COVID crisis, and how his work has changed during the COVID crisis to respond to community needs. Justin is a passionate advocate for environmental justice and a rising star in Michigan. It was a pleasure to talk with him about his work.
Thanks for tuning in to this preview of this week's episode of the Speaking of Resilience podcast. You can find full episodes of our podcast on our website, groundworkcenter.org/podcasts.